Hi guys, welcome to another Divi Theme video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, in yesterday's video we showed you how to write a little bit of CSS to make some text expand and contract. Really great eye-catching thing to have on your site. Somebody said, well, can I use that on my logo to make it spin? We use keyframes and animations. Absolutely, really easy to do. We've got to do it a slightly different way today. We can't actually code inside the module, but we're going to use our additional CSS panel, exactly the same thing. So let me show you what's going on. So here we are on the site, and if you look up at the logo there, it's going to start spinning around. It's going to spin around twice or three times, then it's going to stop. It's going to wait for about 6 seconds, and it's going to start doing it again. And I've also got it that if you put your mouse over it, it's going to stop. So I hope that answered that question. This is really easy to do. And like I mentioned earlier, this is an extension of what we did yesterday, using some keyframes to build an animation. And it's really easy to do. To do this today, I'm going to go over to my theme customizer, down to dashboard. There's the theme customizer right there. If I open it up, that takes us to this page here, which has got our home page on it. If I look down at the bottom, we've got an additional CSS panel right here. And this is exactly the same one as we've got down in Divi Options Custom CSS Panel. Okay, let's get rid of this and we'll start from scratch. I'm doing it in this panel today so you can see exactly what's going on. If I publish this now and just refresh this page, that animation should have stopped now. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to use the inspector tools to find out the class name or ID of our logo up here. I happen to know it's hashtag logo, but just to show you how you can find out, right click and it'll bring up the inspector tools. I'm using Google Chrome for this today, but most browsers have this feature. And if we go down here, I've got elements on this side, so I'll have HTML. And I've got styles selected over here, so I've got CSS. And it's highlighted our image right there, which is our logo. As you can see, if I hover over it, it's turning blue. And if we look over here, we've got a CSS ID. The reason I can tell it's a CSS ID is it's got a hashtag in front of it. And if we look over here at the HTML, it says over there ID logo. So I'm going to just copy that with the hashtag. I'm going to go to my additional CSS panel up here. I'm going to paste it in. Once I've got that, I don't need my inspector tools anymore. I can close those down. Fantastic. So we've now got a name that we can target our little logo up there with. Now, when you write CSS code, it's always a good idea to give it a title. If you write a lot of it, it makes it easier to find. And also it's a courtesy if anybody edits the site after you, here will make life a lot easier for them too. Now a title is / */ Anything that you write within those stars will not be read as code. So let's call this logo spin, whatever you want to call yours obviously. Okay, so we've got our CSS ID of logo there. To affect it, I'm going to open and close some curly brackets just after it, and we're going to write some CSS code. Okay, well again, we've got to write a bit of CSS code for this today. Don't let that put you off. It's really easy to do, and I'm going to take you through it step by step. You can't mess up your site with CSS, so there's no need to be afraid of it. And again, we're going to write keyframes, which as I mentioned earlier, is like stop frame animation. You've got a timeline, in our case 8 seconds, and you can tell things what you want them to do along that timeline by using percentage marks. And we're going to use transform rotate today over the x-axis, but you can put it on the y-axis or just leave it as it is and have it spinning like a wheel, depending on the shape and your logo, whatever works for you. But I'm also going to have a bit of a time delay on this, so it's going to spin around twice, then it's going to stop for a few seconds so it doesn't get too crazy, and then it's going to start back up again. And as you'll see, really easy to do. Now CSS code You can just copy and paste it if you want to, but I would recommend that you get in the habit of actually writing it, because it's going to take your skills way up to the next level when it comes to editing, and it's great fun too. Let's get back to the build. Now, to make this happen today, I need to write an animation. So I'm going to say animation, colon. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it LGSP. That's kind of my shorthand for logo spin. You can call yours what you want. It wants to be unique. There only wants to be one name, LGSP. And I like it to make a bit of sense to me. So if I see it in the code, I know what's going on. I'm going to have mine running for 8 seconds, 8S. I want it to keep rolling and rolling, so I'm going to say infinite. And I want it to be smooth, so I'm going to say linear. That's great. Now, as in yesterday's video, we've actually got to create this animation that we've called LGSP. So down below our little curly bracket there, I'm going to drop down. We're using keyframes for this today. And as I mentioned earlier, keyframes are like doing stop frame animation. You can make things happen over time. And our time at the moment is we've given it 8 seconds. So I'm going to say at keyframes. Then the name, which was LGSP. Then we can open and close some more curly brackets and tell it what we want it to do. Well, at 0% or second 1 of our 8 seconds there, or basically when the page loads. So we're going to write 0, then %, open and close some more curly brackets. I don't want it to do anything. I want it to be right side up. So I'm going to say transform. Colon, rotate. I want mine to rotate around the x-axis, so it'll spin that way. I'll demonstrate the difference for you in a minute. Right at the end of the x, with no gap, I can open some round brackets and tell it by how many degrees I want it to rotate. Well, I don't want it to rotate at all when the page loads, so I'm going to say 0. Now I'm going to copy this from the 0 to that first curly bracket there. Control C to copy. I'm going to drop down and paste it below. Control V to paste. I'm going to say at 20%, which would be 1.6 seconds of our 8 seconds. I'm going to have it spin round twice. So that would be 360 degrees. And obviously adjust this to your taste. And as you can see, it started spinning up there already. Fantastic. Then at 40%, I want it to go back to how it was, which is not rotating at all. So I've copied that first one. I'm going to make that 40 instead of 0. And I want it to stay like that. So it stops for a little bit. And then it'll start back up just like that. So at 1.6 seconds, it's starting to spin. At twice that, which would be 3.2 seconds, it's going to stop. And from 3.2 to 8 seconds, it's not going to do anything at all. Now, if you wanted this constantly to spin around like that, we could change that to 50. And change this to 100. And it would just constantly slowly rotate like that. If you wanted it to go faster, just make the timing smaller. If we change that to 4, you'll see that it'll spin around a lot faster. But like I say, that's a little too much for me. I'm going to change that back to 8 seconds. I'll change these back to how I had them, which is 20 and 40. That way it stops, gives them a bit of breather, and then it's going to get their eyes back on it again when it does that. But when it gets back to 100, that's actually working. I want to make sure that it's back to 0. So I'm going to put a comma after our 0% there. I'm going to put 100% also. So at 0% and 100%, it's not rotating. Now what I want is if they put their mouse on it, I want it to stop. It just coincidentally stopped right there, but it was not going to stop regularly, especially if you've got it rotating all the time like I showed you just now. And to do that, we can create a hover state really easily. Let's just copy our CSS ID of logo there. We can drop down. Right after the O of logo there, I'm going to put a colon, no gaps anywhere, and the word hover. We just created a hover state. Let's open and close some more curly brackets. And all I need to do to make it stop on hover is say animation, colon, none. Now when I roll over it, let's wait for it to animate. It'll stop. When I take my mouse off, it'll start back up again. Perfect. And that's a really eye-catching thing to have on your site. Like I said, I've got mine spinning twice. If you just want it to spin once, 180. Now when it rolls around, it's just going to roll around once. It'll be a bit slower because it's not got so far to go over that time period. If you wanted it to spin the other way, change that to a capital Y. You'll see some strange things happening if I don't do this pretty quickly. As you can see, it's spinning around the other axis there, which again is quite a nice effect, depending on your logo, obviously. If you just want it to spin like a wheel, just take the Y or the X away, so it just says rotate there. And again, depending on what kind of logo you've got there, we're only doing 180. Let's change that back to 360. It'll spin all the way around. As you can see, let's just change that back to how we had it, which was on the Y-axis, or on the X-axis, I should say. And if you mix and match, like I say, you can get some crazy things going. As I mentioned, don't be afraid of CSS. You can play with it. It's not going to break your site. Don't like what you've done, just select it and delete it. Now, before this becomes permanent, we need to publish it. If I actually go back to our page here and refresh, there should be no animation on there because we've not published that. So now if I go back, now we've published our code, and I refresh this now. As you can see, our animation's now working again. And it's going to stop for about 6 seconds or so. And it's going to start back up again. So I hope that's what you were looking for. There's how to do it, and it certainly does get people's attention when something like that happens. They're going to remember your logo, I imagine. Perfect. Just exactly what I wanted. And there it is. That's how to make a spinning animation for your logo up there, that when you put the mouse on it, it's going to stop. As you can see, really easy to do. I've put that code just down below for anybody that wants to copy and paste it. But as I mentioned earlier, it would be a great thing to learn. So I would encourage you to just write it out. It's a lot easier than you may have thought. So I hope you enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please hit like, ring the bell, comment. It's always great to hear from you. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. If you enjoyed this today and enjoy CSS, have a look at our custom CSS playlist. It should appear just over here any moment now. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.